everyone and welcome to my craft room. I'm Leo from inkymemories.co.uk, an independent Stampin' Up demonstrator based in South Wales, and today on this Workshop Wednesday video we're going to be making some thank you cards. As I'm sure if you've seen any of my videos previously, you'll know there are three types of cards that I always need in my craft room: birthday cards, thank you cards, and then Christmas cards. As it is the end of the month and I'm now creating thank you packs for everyone that has shopped with me this month, it's time to create this month's thank you card. And the bundle we're going to be using today is this one, the So Sentimental bundle and the Stitched So Sweetly dies. Now these can be found in the annual catalogue on page 74, and as this is a bundle, if you buy the bundle together, it does save you 10% over buying the stamps and dies separately, so that is a really good deal. We're going to be using a couple of other products with this today. The first one is the In Good Taste Designer Series paper. Now we've used this a couple of times already recently. As of recording and as of when this video goes live, this DSP is on sale. So currently there is a DSP sale, 15% off a huge bunch of different Designer Series paper packs, and this is one of them. And then the other thing that we're going to be using today is from the holiday catalogue, so the August to December catalogue, and this is the Brushed Metals cardstock, which is this gorgeous foil in three shades. You have a copper, a gold and a brass or champagne-y shade in here, and it has this gorgeous brushed finish to it, so it's not like a really shiny foil, it is slightly more textured. Like I said, this is in the August to December catalogue and I'm very hopeful this is going to carry over because it is gorgeous. So let us get started. As this is a Workshop Wednesday, all of the cutting needs to be done today. So our card base is going to be in Early Espresso. Let me just pop these out of the way and bring in my paper trimmer. So as always for a card base, I'm simply going to cut my piece of A4 in half first of all. And half of a sheet of A4 works out 14.85 centimetres, not a simple measurement. This is the problem with using metric on cardstock that was definitely cut in Imperial. So all I do, make sure that I have the cardstock butted right up to the top of the trimmer where you've got this sort of block at the end. Move it to 14.8 and then just knock it over to add that extra half. Pop the guide down in place and then using the darker cutting blade, just run that straight through your cardstock. I'm then going to rotate this. Now A4 is 21 centimetres wide, so we need to score this at the halfway mark to make our cards. That will be 10.5. Again, make sure it's butted up against the top. Pull it to your 10.5 mark on the ruler, and then this time I'm using the scoring blade, which is the pale grey one. I'm just going to run this through a couple of times just with light pressure. You don't need to push too hard. And there is the score line on our card base. So the other things I need to cut then, I need a mat for the inside of the card. Now for this, I want this to be 13.35 by 9 centimetres. So I'm going to first of all cut this at 13.35. So I'm going to do exactly the same, make sure it's butted up to the top of my trimmer. Get to 13.3 and then just notch it over the line to add on that 0.5 or 0.5, sorry I should say. And then again using the trimmer blade, just pull that straight through. And then I want this to be 9 centimetres wide, so just turn that around, move it to the 9 centimetre mark and run the blade through that. And I'm going to keep hold of this. I do need a sentiment piece, so I'm going to keep that to one side as well. And then I need some of the Designer Series paper. And there are lots and lots of different patterns and textures in this stack. It is so gorgeous. As you can see, you've got wood grain, you've got sort of wood paneling, you've got paint textures, tiles, so many different things. There's sort of fabric-y textures in here as well. And lots of different shades in this. This actually spans a lot of different colours. So you've got basic grey, early espresso, grey granite, night of navy, petal pink, rococo rose, smoky slate, very vanilla, and whisper white. So there is a real huge mix of fairly neutral colours in this stack. So lots of different occasions that this would absolutely work for. And I think this time I'm actually going to use this slightly wider wood plank effect for the card today. And I need to cut a piece of this, same as before, so I want this to be 13.35 by 9. And I want to just double check, I want my planks to be going this way across my card. So this is the 13.35 cut that I need to do first of all. So pop your guide into place. In fact, no, let's do it the other way. I'm going to first of all do it at 9 and then cut the 13.35 out of that. It may or may not make a difference. Okay, so there is our 9 centimetre mark. And then I'll do that at 13.35. Okay, so there is the piece for the front, and again I'm going to keep this will come in handy very soon. Now the last thing I want to do is to cut myself a piece of the brushed metals cardstock. I'm going to be using the Stitched So Sweetly dies to make a mat for my sentiment. And one of the tips that I would sort of definitely pass on when it comes to cutting foil pieces is to make sure that you're not cutting, so say this is the die that I want to cut out, basically this nice stitch shape here. So I could, you know, just cut a strip of cardstock that is wide enough and run the whole thing through. But what will happen, especially with this foil cardstock, the surface of your cutting plates can leave scars on this part that you're not using this time, and it means that then you can't use it again in the future. So my recommendation whenever you are cutting foil in a die cutting machine is to cut a piece that is just big enough for the die that you want to cut. So if I rip this open, I want to use this copper colour today. I've got a little piece here, hopefully it will be big enough. And if I grab my little ruler, so this die, this one measures, so it's just under 6 centimetres across, and it is just under 9 centimetres long. So I'm going to cut this piece of foil to size. I'm pretty sure, yes, this is already 6 centimetres across. So I'm just going to cut myself a 9 centimetre piece of this. And then this is perfectly sized for our die with little waste as possible. And it means that I'm not, you know, scarring foil that I could potentially use again in the future. Okay, I'm pretty sure that is all of the trimming that we need to do. Let me just double check. Just going to cut this waste piece, or this scrap piece, or it's not waste, it's scrap, down ever so slightly. I'm going to cut this to 6 centimetres as well, just so that I can run both of them through my die cutting machine at the same time. Okay, there we go. That is now all of the cutting that we need to do. So I'll pop my trimmer out to the side and we shall get some stamping done. So this is the So Sentimental stamp set, and these are the dies. So basically these dies are designed to go around a number of different sentiments. So some examples, this I Can't Thank You Enough, which is, funnily enough, the one we're going to be using today, fits beautifully into there. You've got all of these stitched and scalloped rectangles as well. You can fit this Wishing You Much Happiness Today and Always into this die cut as well. You've got some smaller ones over here. So you could get your Yummylicious into there. So even this teeny tiny one fits around Hello Baby as well. The sort of more rectangular ones you can stack into these rectangles. So it's a really lovely set. Lots of lovely sentiments in this one. I've used this a couple of times for a few different projects recently. But the two dies I'm going to be using today are these two. And the stamps I'm going to be using are I Can't Thank You Enough and Your Friendship Is a Blessing. And this is a red rubber set, so a cling mount. So let's grab those two out. I shall get a couple of clear blocks. So there's that one. And will this fit onto here? Yes, it will. So these are just block D for both of these. And I'm going to be using Early Espresso ink to go with the base that we are using today. So I'm going to pull back in from my little pile of cut pieces. I've got my inner mat and my sentiment piece for the front. So for the front I'm going to be using I Can't Thank You Enough. So let's get that nicely inked up. So I'm just lightly tapping my stamp onto the surface of my ink pad just to get a nice covering of ink over there. Popping my piece of cardstock onto my grid paper, and I like to line the cardstock up. It just helps you to be looking at a straight line, and it helps you then to try and line up your stamp. It doesn't matter too much with this since we are going to be die cutting this out. So I'm going to pop this fairly central onto this piece of cardstock so I've got room for the die around the outside. Give it a nice even press over the back, and there is the sentiment for the front of our card. And then I'm going to do Your Friendship is a Blessing for the inside of my card. So again, I'm just lightly tapping my stamp onto my ink pad, getting a nice even coverage of ink on there, lining up my mat onto my grid paper. And this time I do want to try and get this as central as possible, so please do excuse my head in the shot here, just while I get this lined up. And once you're happy, press your stamp straight down. Don't twist it at all if you can avoid it. Give it some nice even pressure over the surface and hold your cardstock down and lift your stamp straight back up. And that will mean that you get a nice crisp stamped impression with no smudges around the outside. So that is all of the stamping that we're going to be doing, a nice simple one for today. I'm going to pop the inner mat to one side, and I'm going to bring in these two pieces. I'm going to grab my Stampin' Cut and Emboss, my die cutting machine. So let us pop this down on the work surface here and open up the sides. So the sandwich that I'm going to be using today is nice and simple. We're going to start with the base plate, which is plate 1. As we're using thin dies, I'm going to then pop in my thin die adapter, which is plate 2. I'm using magnetic plate 5. So this is just an entire magnetic sheet with a self-healing matte surface over the top, and this actually replaces one of your clear cutting plates, but it holds your dies nice and firmly in place while you're die cutting, so it's really handy. Then I'm going to pop my 2 pieces of cardstock down onto my cutting mat here, and then I have this die, which is for our piece of foil, and you can probably hear the magnet snapping that into place for me. So because I have sized this just right for that die, just making sure that it is all nicely lined up on there. And then taking this one, I'm just going to again line this up around my sentiment so I can make sure I get a nice border all the way around the edge. Okay, I think I'm happy with that. And then to complete my sandwich, I'm going to add in a clear plate 3 over the top. I'm just going to very carefully pop this on top, making sure that neither of my dies wibble around or move. And always when you are setting up your sandwich in your die cutting machine, make sure that it is nicely spaced side to side, that it's not too close to either of the walls so that it will go through nice and easily. And then I'm just going to run this through the machine. It's nice and easy to do this, it's not too hard at all. There we go, that's that done. Pull off my top plate and grab these. So there is our die cut sentiment, and as you can see, it does give this gorgeous stitched border all the way around the edge as well. And the same with our sentiment mat that I've cut in the foil here. So again, we've got that lovely stitched border. And you can actually see ever so slightly on here what I was trying to say about the foil and the scarring. So on my clear plate, as you can see, I have used my die cutting machine quite a lot. It already has a lot of scars on here, and these can transfer, especially onto foil. Foil is much more susceptible than regular cardstock. So here's the cardstock that I ran through that had the sentiment piece in it, and you can see that's still smooth. It hasn't added or transferred any of that scarring onto there, but onto the foil it does. So this is why it's really important when you are die cutting foil to make sure that you do cut a piece that is just big enough for your die, so you don't ruin an entire strip of foil basically putting it through. Okay, I'm going to move my die cutting machine out of the way and we shall carry on. Okay, so we've done our stamping, we've done our die cutting, it is time to start assembling our card. So I'm going to first of all take the piece of DSP that I'm going to use on the front of my card, and I've got some ribbon here. So I've grabbed the 3/8 of an inch or 1 centimetre embroidered ribbon, which is this really gorgeous sort of very vanilla and ever so slightly crumb cakey ribbon. It's a nice soft cotton ribbon laced one with this little stitching on either side, and I just want to run a piece straight across the middle of our designer series paper here. So to do this I'm going to grab some Stamping Seal Plus, flip my paper over, and I want to run just a little tiny strip of adhesive down either side. So just across roughly the middle of the designer series paper on the back side, like so. And I'm going to turn this over and position my ribbon where I want it to be. And that looks about right, I'm happy with that. So then I'm just going to turn it around the edge of the paper and then stick it into that little strip of adhesive that I've put on the back. Pull it straight across the paper without making the paper flex, and then I'll grab my ribbon scissors and just cut this. Always on an angle, it just helps to stop the ribbon from fraying. And then again, once I'm happy that I have this nicely centered, I'll just tuck that around the edge and pinch it into the adhesive, just like so. And you can always move that around if you need to. If you're not quite happy with the positioning, just unstick it and put it back in place. So let's grab a couple of things from over here. We shall fold the card base along that score line. And I'm just using a bone folder then to burnish and reinforce that score. And I'm going to stick down the designer series paper just with some liquid glue. So I'm just going to run a very thin bead of glue right the way around the edge of the paper, making sure that it goes right up to where that ribbon is in place as well, just to hold that down nicely. And then I'm going to transfer this to my card front and pop it into place, just making sure I have a nice even border all the way around that designer series paper. Because you are using liquid glue, you will have a few seconds just to wiggle it around into place if it doesn't land quite right the first time. And just smooth that down. And because we have the ribbon underneath there, you may just want to hold it for a few extra seconds just to give the glue time to bond nicely for you. Okay, and then I'm going to layer up my sentiment. So I'm going to do this with some stamping dimensionals. So just the regular large size dimensionals for this one. I'm going to pop a couple onto the back of my stamped sentiment piece first of all. So just 3 onto the back of there. And then layer this onto the foil piece. Again, just making sure I've got a nice even border all the way around the edge of my sentiment, like so. Turn that over then. I'm going to pop some dimensionals on the back. I'm going to try and avoid roughly where the ribbon is going to be, so the ribbon will run through the middle. And you want to try and avoid that central channel a little bit, not too much with this one since the ribbon is quite flat, but sometimes if you put a dimensional over the top of a piece of ribbon, it can actually make the piece that you're sticking on sort of rock on the front of your card and not feel as secure. So do try and avoid sticking dimensionals onto ribbon if you can avoid it. Okay, again, make sure you've got that nicely centered so that the ribbon comes out of the center of each side. And pop that firmly into place. We shall add in the center mat as well. And again, just with some liquid glue, a nice thin bead around the outside and then a little bit across the middle to hold it. And as always with liquid glue, less is more. You definitely don't want this to sort of all squeeze out around the edges once you put it into place. So this is why it's important just to use a thin bead of glue, and don't put it right to the very edge, because otherwise once you press your piece down, you will find the glue kind of seeps out of the edges and you will end up with a sticky patch inside your card. So that is our finished card. It's a nice simple one today, but using lots of lovely texture and colour. And now I do have obviously an envelope, and I haven't stamped on my envelope, which if any of you have watched my previous videos, you know that I don't like to leave envelopes naked. I like to make sure that my envelopes are as decorated as my card. So I'm actually going to use designer series paper to do this today, which is why I've kept this little strip here. So what I'm going to do is just apply some liquid glue to the flap of my envelope. So again, I'm just going to put this close to, but not right at the edge, all the way around this envelope flap. And then across the middle. And then taking my piece of designer series paper, I'm going to stick this down right up to the fold on my envelope, and then press that firmly into place all the way across the envelope flap there, so that bonds nicely. And then I'm just going to grab a pair of scissors and trim around the edge. So nice and simple, this one. And a really effective way to show off a gorgeous designer series paper and to decorate an envelope with something other than a sentiment or an image. So, you know, if you didn't want to have a stamp on the front, if you wanted to have something a little bit different, this is a really nice way to add a little bit of decoration. You can also add designer series paper as an envelope liner. That also looks really lovely. So you would just cut out a piece that was big enough to sit into the top of the envelope, and then cut a border. So you'd obviously need to leave space for where the glue part is on your envelope, so you'd need to cut it slightly shorter than the whole flap, but you can definitely do that as well. It's another really nice way to use designer series paper on your envelopes. And there we go, we have decorated the flap of the envelope to match our thank you card. So that is my project for today. Even though it is a workshop Wednesday, they're not always really long technical projects. Sometimes they are a little bit simpler like this. Thank you very much for joining me today. I hope you have enjoyed this project. And if you have, please give the video a like. Let me know that you've watched it and maybe it's something that you're going to have a go of yourself. And if you are enjoying the content, please do consider subscribing to my channel. That way you'll be notified every time I post a new video, which is currently twice a week, so every Saturday and either Wednesdays or Tuesdays. All of the products that I've used today are available through my store with Stampin Up, and in the description box below will be a link to that. And don't forget, as of the time I've recorded and posted this video, the designer series paper is currently still on sale. That runs through until the end of October 31st. You have a few more days to take advantage of that. 15% off a huge number of packs of designer series paper. If you are based in the UK and you don't currently have a Stampin' Up! Demonstrator and you'd like a copy of our current catalogues, there will be a link in the description box below for you to the web form on my website where you can request that. New catalogues for spring summer are coming very soon, so if you want to get in on that, fill in that form and I shall get those out to you as soon as I can. Thank you again for joining me today, and I hope to see you in my craft room again soon. Bye bye.